This is the first episode of Gruen Planet, where we look at the world through the magic windows of spin, branding and image control. We're not leaving advertising behind, we're just looking at the other ways we're being bought and sold. We'll meet tonight's panel in a moment, but first, from the spin file. The phrase 9/11 brings to mind awful, indelible images, but perhaps none worse than these, taken from a publicity video released to commemorate the 10th anniversary.
On this 10th anniversary of September 11,
Hooters would like to thank
our firefighters, policemen, and paramedics.
Thank you! The terrorists hate Hooters. You can never find 72 virgins in there. Now to product placement. Gruen viewers have been tweeting to tell us that Myer now has Weight Watchers outlets in its stores, some right next to plus-size ladies' fashions. Because a woman with body issues is never more vulnerable than when she's in the fitting room. Tasteful. Why not put size 20 labels on size 18 dresses and really freak them out? Or put funhouse mirrors in the change rooms. Oh my God, how big does your bum look in that? In branding news, Russian nasal spray Aqua Maris has upped the sport sponsorship ante by turning Yala Neti, the yogic practice of daily nose cleaning, into a competitive event bankrolling a world championship in which contestants compete to snort 5 litres of fluid in one nostril and out the other.
Сейчас он на ваших экранах. Итак, внимание, индийский спортсмен Патанджали глубокого дыхания, в которой Федор особенно силен. Техники свободного дыхания Конюхов сокращает разрыв. Нет, американцу не удалось сохранить темп. Федор Конюхов становится чемпионом мира в 3-й раз подряд.
Somehow I get the feeling Charlie Sheen would be very good at that. Gruen, 9 out of 10 experts recommend it. Time to welcome the panel from Leah Burnett, Todd Sampson, and from Y&R Group, Russell Howcroft. They're joined by 2 new Gruen faces. CEO of crisis and celebrity management company, the Harry M. Miller Group, Lauren Miller Salento, and self-described marketing bloke and occasional propagandist, a man who was in the Liberal bunker for every federal election during the Howard era, Toby Ralph. Welcome. This segment is The Renovators, where we look at a person, brand or idea in desperate need of an overhaul. Let's start with the only leader on earth more besieged than Gaddafi.
John and Jeanette must have got it away a few times in here.
Oh? No, I mean, what people will say. I will be your boss.
How will anything have changed?
We were on before that last week, so technically we were foreplay. That's from the ABC's At Home with Julia. The show is pretty gentle, but it still presents the PM as a figure of fun. Russell, good for a cause or bad?
I actually think this is absolutely brilliant for her. But for me, it's a great pity that millions of people didn't watch it. And it made me like her a whole lot more.
You know that's not really her, right, Russ?
I know.
Gillard first said she hadn't seen the show, but was sure it'd be funny. She was taking the whole thing in a stride until last week everybody wanted her 2 cents on the flag-wrapped sex scene we just saw.
You don't think you should put on the public record because there's been a lot of talk about it over the last 24 hours?
Lisa, I've got some bigger things on my mind, so I'm not intending to comment on it.
Well, you know I've got a good sense of humour, but I'm not going to be drawn on further commentary on this matter.
I can't even draw out of you whether you thought that was a funny moment.
John, end of commentary, full stop.
Bigger things on her mind. That's not really flattering to Tim, is it? Lauren, what would you have advised her to say in that situation?
I think that ABC radio interview was very good because the whole thing is that she does have bigger things on her mind. She is running the country and But it's about a short, sharp statement, but not a gratuitous remark.
It's so difficult for her to say, you know what, I didn't care, I actually thought it was funny, because that might offend people.
One, I think she should have been prepared to answer that exact question, because her people would have said, it's coming, be prepared. And I think that saying nothing says a lot, and no comment is a goldmine for the haters, and she's got quite a few of them.
When you're Prime Minister, you're going to be ridiculed. It's part of the job. I think what people value is consistency in a Prime Minister. And what she did was accept it at first, and then she flipped around when it got personal. I would have said, look, I can take a joke, and I'm fair game. It's a bit rough on Tim, though.
The other thing too is, great quote my father used to say is, when the eagle soars, the parrots begin to jabber. And, the population started saying, what are you doing to the Prime Minister's office? What are you doing to the flag? That sort of caucus spoke for her, and so therefore I don't think she needed to address it.
But I don't think the show has helped her. I mean, when you are declining in the polls and people are ridiculing every single thing you do, political satire fuels that fire and pushes the slide further down.
If you believe the headlines and political cartoons, we don't have a Prime Minister. We have a dead woman walking. Her inner circle is obviously concerned. They've just lured Tony Blair's former strategist, John McTernan, to be part of her spin team. Toby, imagine the PM is your client. What's the very first thing you do?
Yeah, cash up front. I think after that, I'd probably say, think of an apple. The public need to buy an apple. And they've bought your apple already, and they're not saying it's going to be tasty and delicious. You're not going to convince them of that, because they know who you are and what you're doing. What you've got to do is tell them that the other apple's got maggots in it. And that's where I'd be going.
She should fire the guy she just hired, because her major thing is she's wrapped in spin. The whole thing is spun, and we can't even tell what Julie's actually saying, and everything is staged, and everything is overly rehearsed, and I don't think
pretty good. She's pretty good for a talking apple.
It needs to be...
But the maggot is much better.
It does.
I think one of her fundamental difficulties is she's never actually branded. She's always taken the agenda of other people. She had to clean up the mess of Kevin Rudd. She's had to appease the Greens, put up with Rob Oakeshott blathering, deal with Tony Windsor, fob off Andrew Wilkie over pokies. She's never had the time, never established who she is in the public mind.
And just to add to that, to make it worse, is Tony Abbott has been the biggest definer of Julia Gillard's brand.
Indeed.
Tony Abbott, over the last 2 to 3 years, has defined who Julia Gillard is to the majority of the Australian population.
Yeah.
It's important to have the common touch. In Parliament, Gillard's a bit of a scrapper. Behind closed doors, she's said to be funny, vulgar, almost hawkish.
I tell you what, any boss who sacks anyone for not turning up today is a bum.
Russell, she's been criticised for her broad accent, but that aside, would it help to let her Aussiness out a bit more?
I think one of the interesting things to observe is that there's almost this desire to be like a middle-class eastern suburbs, mum, if you like. The pearl earrings and the colours, which clearly isn't what she is. Being from Adelaide, if you like, or in a Melbourne context, being clearly from Fitzroy, having some groovy jewellery and really being true to yourself, I think would go a whole lot, a long way.
It's interesting that she is actually representative of the greater population, yet they tear her down.
Yeah, I think this is where we treat, I know it's unpopular to say, but I think this is where we treat women different than men. I don't think she could pull off I'm sitting back having some beer watching sport with my mates, hockey. I think if she did that, she would be reckless. She would be positioned as a reckless bogan.
Prime Ministers often have used sport to humanise themselves. Remember when John Howard stayed up late to watch the World Cup?
The Prime Minister donned a trackie on the couch.
It's like Kermit the Frog came to life. Now, Gillard had the perfect opportunity a couple of weeks back to do the same when Sam Stosur won the US Open. Stosur told the story best herself in one of Hamish and Andy's typically relaxed interviews.
Have you got a call from Julia? Did
I
she
have,
call you?
actually. It was really bizarre, but
What did you
very
chat
cool.
about? Oh, she just asked how I was feeling, and she said that she didn't get a chance to watch the match because she actually had to go to work, unlike everyone else that I know.
Gillard didn't even watch the match. Todd, if you're an advisor, aren't you saying lie? Just say you watched it.
You know, there's a saying that if the truth is intelligible, then fix it so it is. And in this case, I think she could have at least watched some of the match. What irritates me about this is that she actually phoned her. So she actually made a PR opportunity out of it. All she needed to do is just watch some of it. She could have just watched the part where she went, yes, and threw a racket into the air. But instead what she said to her is she phoned her up and said, look, what you do is good, it's just not important to me, but I'd like to thank you for your contribution.
No, come off it. All she's done is tell the truth. Yeah, so she's been... who cares whether she watched the game or not?
She called up to say congratulations and hadn't even seen it.
Yeah, so what? Because she found out that she won. Honestly, that's just unfair.
Howard genuinely loved sport, so that was true. It might be awkward, but he loved it. She probably doesn't.
Did he love sport so much that he always invited cameramen around him?
Yeah, good point.
But that was a big part of his persona. Yeah. Walking in that tracksuit was a part of what made him human, what made,
but human. He was experimenting with truth, you know?
Sort of made him human.
That's right. She's the Prime Minister of Australia. She's found out that she's won, and so she's given her a call and said, good on you.
It was recently reported that the PM has had media training to help her sound less wooden. On the weekend, there was a story about her team approaching comedian Gruen for a few spare gags. Toby, how might some good lines work for the PM?
I'm a shoo-in for the next election. I'd raise a laugh or two. Look, I think Corinne Grant is a very funny comedian who shouldn't be a politician. I suspect Julia Gillard is a good politician who shouldn't be a comedian.
No, Toby, but you know that politicians forever have had comedy writers give them a hand.
They have.
And it's because it's important to be funny. Yeah, and when you're in that position and she's probably doing public speaking 5 or 6 or 7 times a week, it's important to have some good lines,
this is where I think she's getting bad advice. This is where I think Spin gone crazy. I think she doesn't need to be funny. Her goal should not be, how can I be liked by people? It should be, how can I be respected by people?
No.
And she's too focused on being liked and saying the right things and being funny for the Australian population. It doesn't work.
To be really funny, you need to take risks, and you can't do that as a Prime Minister.
No.
She's a tiger. I don't know how much Question Time you watch with a cuppa on a Tuesday, but she's a tiger in Question Time. She's fantastic. And it's like, well, where is that person? Where is that person in these media interviews?
That's hidden by many, many, many layers of spin and control and people giving advice.
Towards the end of his tenure, when the polls were pretty rough, UK Prime Minister Tony Blair turned up on MasterChef. Closer to home, Channel 10 has been heavily promoting our PM's upcoming cameo.
At just 10 years of age, Lily has found herself cooking for the Prime Minister.
I'm cooking a chocolate cake with a vanilla bean cream, hazelnut praline and chocolate dipped strawberries.
You look like you've been working hard.
Oh, Julia, you have no idea.
I brought it out of the oven and I went to put it down and it slipped.
Don't worry, Matt Preston still ate it. The Dalai Lama looked like a pork chop at a Jewish wedding when he went on MasterChef. Toby, why would the PM staff have pushed for an appearance like this?
Well, I think she's probably in trouble on the over-18 vote, and she's kind of moving forward to the younger demographic. They're trying to humanise her, but it's just a bit too transparent. They're trying to make her look every day.
Is it that sort of thing where people go, one of the perceptions she has, rightly or wrongly, is that she doesn't like kids? She doesn't have kids, so she doesn't like kids, you put her around kids.
Doesn't like kids, isn't mumsy, doesn't know how to cook.
It's also a control. This is what we were referring to earlier. It's also a control media appearance because they can pretty much control how that's going to go, and chances are the kids will be awestruck and love her. So she's in a really controlled, easy media environment. High reach with over a million people watching it, low risk.
There aren't many positive PR environments for a broad audience. Grocery buying mums. That's who she needs to talk to, hard-working Australian families who, these are representative of their kids. Their parents are sitting in those bleachers, and that's an environment where she can be more human.
I think it is good for 10. They will get ratings out of it, but I'm not so sure it's good for the Prime Minister.
It's a more natural fit than the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
Only just. I mean, really.
The Dalai Lama was a sad, sad day in marketing history. When you've got the Dalai Lama fronting the biggest advertising vehicle in Australian history.
So the Prime Minister of Australia turning up at Junior MasterChef isn't sad?
At least it's kids.
Well, what's the difference? Oh.
But I think they'd be thrilled. I think they'd be honoured. That's
Well, the kids, of course the kids will be honoured, but that's not really the point. She's not there for the kids, she's there for the audience.
Yeah. Oh, no, the kids would be honoured. No, there's no doubt. They're obviously very excited, but kids are also excited when SpongeBob turns up. So, you know. OK, if you could throw one Hail Mary pass, get Gillard to do one thing to help her reconnect with voters, what would it be? Toby, what would you do?
I'd have her have a fight with somebody and win it. And I'd pick on... and I'd pick on someone unpopular, Tony Windsor or Andrew Wilkie. You know, those guys, or certainly Rob Oakeshott. Oakeshott and Windsor will be really hard-pressed to vote against her, although they're constantly threatening to, because the minute they take power away from her, they become completely irrelevant. And I don't think they're going to do it. She can take them on.
Russell, what would you do?
She, the government, needs to use advertising more,
My God, I'm so surprised by that answer. But what sort of ads? What would you be doing?
No, this government spends a lot less than the Howard government did. But advertising plays a really critical role in that it tells people, it tells the public what you are doing, what the government is doing. I'm not talking political advertising. I'm just saying ads that say we are in government and we are doing things that government should do. The lack of spend is mental.
Lauren, you've got one thing to do.
My one might be a bit of a gimme, but I think that she needs to, for the Australian stage and the international stage, to show some real leadership, is legalise gay marriage. I mean, because that says... And so, are we prepared? So therefore she says, I've looked at this wrong, I'm prepared to backflip, and I'm going to lead my party into a new era. And then she's immediately on the world stage as a leader who's stood up, and I think that ticks a few boxes in her spin, branding, position, future voters. I think that's a biggie.
Yeah.
I think she should go out swinging. I think that she should just go after her convictions, state them really clearly, don't worry about losing or winning an election, bugger the polls, just go straight for what she believes in and talk about it off script and go for it.
Right, so all she has to do is legalise gay marriage, pick a fight with, say, Fred Nile, who hates gay marriage, and then Russell will just make ads about the whole thing. Of course, for all our debate, the real question Julia should be asking is simple. What would Putin do? If he was flagging in the polls, what response would we see from Vladimir Putin, the world's greatest self-spinning politician? How would he distract the electorate from real issues while pimping himself big time? Easy. He'd do what he did recently, go diving at Russia's legendary Atlantis, a Black Sea archaeological site, and surface with 2 ancient ceramic containers. Truly, if he were any more of a cartoon action man, he'd be Tony Abbott. Gruen planet, thick, strong, and still the most absorbent. And now, the pitch where agencies sell the unsellable, fighting for survival in the Advo Dome. It's grand final week, which means we're heading towards Mad Monday, the annual day of footballer atrocities. And inevitably, when the latest drunken outrage is revealed, players will bleat, "We're not role models." So we've asked our agencies to come up with an ad to convince Australians we should stop expecting footballers to be anything more than footballers. Can they slot that between the sticks? Let's find out. Welcome from Black Box in Adelaide, Brenton Bock, and from Cooch in Perth, Ron Samuel. All right, Brenton, how did you tackle this one?
Well, we spoke to players, both present and past, and we thought we might try and persuade the public to sympathise with them.
Let's have a look.
In regards to the media coverage of my so-called disgraceful behaviour, I would like to again point out the unfair treatment and inaccurate reporting of my life outside football.
Oh, great job. Thank you. Ron, how did your side aim up?
We thought we'd keep it simple and just take the opportunity to remind people out there who the real role models really are.
Let's have a look.
Mate, that's not the way we treat our apples, is it?
Sub! Mate, if you hit him, it's going to make a real big mess. Sub!
You really need to practice first.
Sub! I hope that's not one of your good mates. They're hard to find.
Boys, no. That's very dangerous.
A good role model is always there. That's why it can't be us. There's no substitute for a parent. Football may be our life, but life is not a game.
Good job. Russell, both great ads. What did you like?
I loved Black Box exposing, if you like, the media spin behind these things. However, I'm going to go with Cooch because I think that their message everyone will agree with.
Toby?
Both very good. I've got to go with Cooch. The strategy was spot on. Both executions were superb, though, but Cooch.
Lauren, what do you think?
I thought the first flagged beautifully about it is that moment captured on a mobile phone that's such an undoing. But the second message just really drove it home, so the second one.
And finally, Todd?
Yeah, I thought the second one did funny and real really well, so I'd definitely go for the second one.
Oh, well, congratulations to you both. I'm just excited that Gavin Wanganeen has been on our show now. That's how the panel scored. Register your vote at our website or call your mum and tell her. You know, she's waiting for your call. Gruen, now available in dark. Everyone knows the Earth spins 24/7. Here's the proof. This week, Louis the Fly came back from the dead. A fortnight after Mortine announced his demise in a flurry of publicity, it now looks like the whole thing was a hoax, a lame attempt to get us to demand his return. They even had an encouraging ad ready to go.
Louis, it's time we killed you off. Forever.
But you've been killing me off for over 50 years.
You're too old to be the face of such advanced technology.
I'll tell you why the fly's there, lady. Your ad is shit. None of which means that permanent retirement and miracle resurrection isn't a good strategy. I mean, it worked for Jesus and John Farnham. This week we found out more than 100 primary schools in China are now sponsored by tobacco companies, like the Sichuan Tobacco Hope Primary School, which carries the motto, talent comes from hard work, tobacco helps you become talented. Coming soon to Chinese TV, Young Tobacco Time with Johnny Young. Close your eyes and I'll... This week, our favourite spin is actually a spin buster, a YouTube mashup by Victoria's James Clark, who spliced the anti-carbon tax ads with some very funny South Park audio of people who sound like roosters. The result is a comment on modern whinging Australia. We salute it.
Here are some questions for Canberra.
From families.
From communities. From tourism operators. And from small businesses everywhere.
They took our job. 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 They took my job. They took our job.
Okay, Australia, off your lounges, stand to attention, hands on hearts. It's patriotism time.
In the land of the Southern Cross, how does it happen? You know how it happens. You can get it striving. You can get it doing nothing at all.
The golden throat charmer.
Foster's. It's Australian for beer, mate.
Oh, crikey. Doesn't get more Aussie than those ads, does it? Last week, South African-born British-based company SAB Miller paid $12.3 billion for Foster's, which owns VB and Carlton. All three are now technically Pommy beers. Todd, how do you sell an Aussie beer which is no longer Aussie?
I think you need to separate the company from the brand. So it is possible for a foreign company to market and advertise successfully an Australian brand. That is absolutely possible. It's illegal to claim it's 100% Australian owned, but you can, Vegemite, most people still believe to this day that Vegemite is Australian. It's not, it's 100% owned by an American company. So it's absolutely possible. It's just branding.
I'm not convinced that, sovereign ownership is a big issue for the VB drinker, quite honestly. I don't think they read the Financial Review. They're kind of looking at the comics and the telly. They changed it from Victoria Bitter to VB so they knew how to spell it.
Obviously not looking for a job with anyone who drinks VB, but I think you'll find that Russell Crowe drinks VB and he can throw a punch, Tony. The Foster's sale led to quite a bit of media hand-wringing about iconic brands bought by foreign concerns. Toby, how closely will Foster's monitor the public backlash?
They'll be all over it, but they're going to segment their research very carefully. They'll be looking on a brand-by-brand basis about what do people think, who cares about this, and that's where they'll go. The people who care may well not be their core brand drinkers.
I think we live in a 90-day world's 24-hour news cycle. This will all be gone and forgotten and people will drink the beer.
One of the things they'll be very diligent about is what's on the side of the can and where it's brewed. So the brewery is going to remain in Australia, and they'll make sure that it says on the side of the can brewed in Abbotsford, Victoria, and they'll make sure that does not leave the can.
And let's not forget that Foster's make Corona, Mexican beer, here. So if Australians can make Mexican beer for Australian consumption, why can't South Africans make Australian beer for Australian consumption? In Australia, I don't think it's a problem.
Oh, that's actually reassured me. I didn't know that was true because I often buy Foster's to take it to a party, put it in the fridge, and then take someone else's Coronas. It's a swap. Yeah, it's like you're fine. Foster's competitors are looking to pounce. Melbourne lager company Brew launched a radio ad yesterday taking the piss out of Victoria Bitter ads.
The best warm beer in our recently acquired portfolio is Victoria Bitter. You can get it in Essex, you can get it in Slough. Matter of fact, we own it now.
If you'd rather an Aussie-owned beer, try Brew for a homegrown thirst.
Russell, will that approach work?
Do you remember when Alan Bond purchased 4X up in Brisbane? And he put Bond on the side of the can, and then a fella called Bernie Powers, he launched Powers Bitter. And you had to be a Queenslander in order to own shares in Bernie Powers beer. Now, 4X is still with us and Bernie Powers isn't. So, ultimately, the big brands will win.
Here's Foster's CEO, John Pollaers, defending the sale.
The wonderful thing about this deal is it means that our brands have a bigger opportunity offshore. And frankly, our people have a bigger opportunity offshore. The opportunity for the business, I think, just opens up now.
Toby, talk us through this. Who would have arrived at that line and how?
The board of Foster's, in conjunction with SAB, would have agreed on the line, which had been written up by their financial PR people, I'd imagine, and then they gave it to this poor bloke, who looks like he's been reading, job opportunities all morning, to go and spin it. There's a rule that you should follow